when I started telling people, oh, I'm going to this event about fashion and feminism, a bunch of people were like, oh, yay, party, it sounds great. Another bunch of people had this response. I'll roughly classify it for you. It was like this: fashion and feminism. To them, I think it sounded like nuclear disarmament and kittens, or goods and sales tax bill and malpua. Or this was just not working for them. And also I got a sense that for some people, fashion was the malpua, and for some people, feminism was the malpua. For some people, fashion was the nuclear disarmament, and some people, feminism was the nuclear disarmament. So starting there, why do we have this weird feeling of dissonance between fashion and feminism, Lela?
No, you're absolutely right that there is a knee-jerk but long-lasting misconception that fashion is frivolous and feminism is serious stuff. When I was in my 20s, which is many, many decades ago, the feminist movement was in its infancy. And like all sane people, I frankly took its principles as simple common sense. I was fortunate to come from a family where women had never been in parda, and for three generations before me had pursued their passions and beliefs, fought for India's freedom, married by choice. So I didn't, with the arrogant self-centeredness of youth, I really didn't bother too much about other people. I took it for granted. I didn't burn my bra or join protest marches. But on the other hand, many of my close friends were feminist activists. And it was interesting to me that despite my being a self-supporting professional who rode a motorcycle and lived in a Barsati by myself at a time when not many young women did, the sheer fact that I cared about clothes and wore makeup and loved to cook and embroider made me slightly suspect. And that I wasn't really regarded as a true part of the sisterhood. I remember Kamla Bhasin, who's still a stalwart of the feminist movement, saying to me, how can I take you seriously when you paint your toenails? Luckily, things have changed since those early earnest days, and these sort of womanly activities or frivolous activities are now regarded as quite an important part of the feminist view of the world, as opposed to the textbook male man. And books are written about the subversive history of sewing, and embroidery is looked at as an art form. And fashion is actually studied, clothing and fashion is studied as a part of social history. Now, interestingly for me, because I lead a rather schizophrenic life, half in Delhi and half out in India's villages, in India's villages, no one took it at all askance that I cared for clothes and grooming. And I was often very moved that women in the desert, who walked sometimes 4 kilometers for a bucket of water, and worked in the fields, looked after their families, lived in a space which was about what Nisha and I are occupying, still took such extraordinary pains over how they looked. And they spent their few leisure moments embroidering exquisite clothes for themselves, and they embellished them with mirrors and tassels. They tattooed themselves long before it became an urban fashion statement. And they actually found the clothes that city people wore when they went to villages very strange. And I remember Ramba Ben asking me once, tongue-in-cheek, I thought people from Delhi were very rich. Why do they wear these torn, faded kurtas when they come and visit us? And don't they have any jewelry? So I always actually look exactly the same, whether I'm in Delhi, Denmark, or darkest Bihar. And visiting rural Karnataka after an absence of some years, I remember one old lady in Upinbetigiri rushing out to greet me with a stream of very angry Kannada. And I asked my companion why she was so upset. And she explained, she's saying, you wore the same kurta you came last time you came. Don't you know that we look forward to seeing what you wear? I had absolutely no idea that I was their local version of their latest Vogue issue. So anyway, how you look is really an extension of your identity. And fashion is just a formalized way of helping people to find their identity and express it. Millions of women not only wear fashionable clothes, but are engaged in its production. So for me, the two F words go very well together. This said, nobody should be led by the nose by fashion, and fashion should not forget to have a feminist perspective.
Sharanya, just leading on from what Leila was saying about expression, I think that's a big concern of yours. I was trying to explain to someone I met about what your engagement with fashion is, and I said, think of it like someone who is obsessed with interior decoration, who redoes their house like every two weeks or every 2 months. It is an artistic project for Sharanya to think of different ways in dressing, what that means in a sort of social context, all kinds of things, right? So I wondered, where did this start, and how has this progressed?
We think that wanting to be not just fashionable, but wanting to express oneself through one's appearance is an act of vanity. And this is not always true. It can be an act of self-possession. That being said, since I was a child, I was just drawn to the ways in which a person could make themselves beautiful. And beauty could come in so many forms and shapes and types. I think that one of the things which I very lightly touched on the essay, which I wanted to speak about more, was body shaming. Growing up being dark-skinned, being short, all of these things, I was told that I was unattractive through most of my early years, and that I didn't have a right to want to be beautiful. And I think that this is true for many, many people, regardless of how beautiful one actually is. We are told, we're conditioned, whether that's through our families or social messages or cinema, that we don't have a right to be beautiful, or to feel beautiful, more importantly. Which is why I think fashion is such a feminist project. If feminism is about identity and about being one's truest self, the presentation of that self matters. And I think every day when one looks in the mirror, you're confronting not only that self, but the chosen presentation for that day. In India, as well as in many places, women code switch all the time. We look a certain way when we go to work, to the office. We look a certain way when we go to a club. We look a certain way when we're with our families. Who's to say which one is more true than the other? Even if we tell ourselves this is just a disguise, this is just a shrug I'm wearing, all of those selves are true. And I think when we operate in different sartorial modes, we are different people. It's as simple as, I'm sure those of you who wear contact lenses and wear spectacles as well, don't you think you're a different person when you wear specs and when you wear contacts?
I can see very many people with nice spectacles nodding away.
Yeah. Same here. I'm short-sighted too, and when I wear my glasses, I'm one person. When I wear my contacts, I'm another.
So I know this is something that Malika wanted to get into as well. I think she said, the thing I want to talk about is body positivity. Yeah. So I want to ask you, why are you in a sort of sadomasochistic relationship with Makeup Didi? Is it part of body positivity crisis?
No, it is as frivolous as it appears to be. I just want to put it out there. So a lot of people ask me, what's the social message behind Makeup Didi? I'm like, I'm really sorry, but there's none. Like, even when I try to find it, there isn't any. But why I want to talk about it is that I've always nurtured this dream of being an actor, and I've always sort of shoved it in a corner every time I got close to it or something, and always waited for something to happen, something that brings me to the industry rather than it just happening on its own. And I've been here for like 10 days now in Bombay, and even before I came here, what everyone says is, you have such a pretty face, but thoda weight lose kar lo. And I'm just like, okay, fine, but do you have a problem with the way I am? Like, what is your issue? And so many casting people come and tell me that, you should lose some weight or everyone will only cast you in chubby girl parts. And I don't know, part of me is lazy.
What's a chubby girl part? I mean, just...
I don't know. Like this one time I got a call, and this guy called, and he wasn't even like in the production side of the serial. He was just somebody, and he's like, "Madam जी, हमें ना casting करनी है आपकी role के लिए." मैंने बोला बताइए, कहते एक मोटी लड़की का part है. तो मैंने कहा अच्छा, और कहते और तो मालूम नहीं जी, अभी मोटी लड़की का पार्ट है. मैंने बोला स्क्रिप्ट भेजेंगे आप मुझे, रोल क्या है, आपकी रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है. कहते वो तो मालूम नहीं है, वो लड़की हेल्थी होनी चाहिए और डायरेक्टर ने बोला आपको फ़ोन करने के लिए. So I was just, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry or do what. I said, अच्छा बाद में बात करते हैं. I just didn't know what to do. And fortunately, like, I mean, I'm very lucky. I've been raised by a family that's always like, you know, validated everything that I've done. But there's so many around me who don't have that, who are thinner, more pretty, have nice hair, everything, but they think they are downright ugly. Like, it's just a problem of self-esteem. And what I discovered is that the better I do at what I do, the less I care about these things. And so yeah, as far as feminism and fashion is concerned, I was having this conversation with someone also. And what I felt was that I don't think the same liberties or the same, you know, courtesies are extended to both girls and boys when it comes to fashion. Like, if I'm wearing shorts, it's maybe because I'm feeling hot. It's not because I'm asking for it. And you know, if you have a problem with that, then that's your problem. That's not my problem.
This shorts thing reminds me of, I don't know whether you guys noticed at the bottom of, like, I'm really jobless, okay? So Mintra, for instance, like a lot of products, they have, for some reason, some literary impulses, like these shopping sites. So at the bottom, there are descriptions of shorts or descriptions of whatever product it is. I mean, we are just there for the picture, right? We're not there to read anything, but there is. So the last time I was on one of these sites, there was a description of shorts. Men, please wear shorts because in the summer it is very cool. Ladies, wear shorts only if your legs are thin. I swear to you. Okay, I have a screenshot, okay? I was like, who is this? What is this? I just want to buy these shorts and run away. Like, I don't know whether you guys know this. You know, journalists, they only hang out with journalists, okay? So mostly, we don't know anybody who has actual jobs. So when we meet people who are like, say, someone is a policeman, say, we're damn excited. We're like, wow, someone with a real job, okay? Or we meet someone who's a CA and we're like, what's that like, okay? And so I was at a party once where we met someone who was doing technology to build drones, okay? This was 6-7 years ago. The most popular person in the party for the rest of the evening, because it was the only person in the room with a job. The rest of us were journalists, right? So to an extent, that's the kind of like, oh, drone manufacturer feeling that I'm getting when I meet Anita, because actually she knows her stuff. She works in the industry. She knows she's going to tell us, is this whole conversation about fashion and feminism in the abstract, or is it like how major issues of ecology or environmental consciousness has pushed the fashion industry over years to think about, you know, creating new textiles, technology? Has political messaging about feminism enthused the industry into thinking about those kind of things as well?
You know, when I created and my label, which was, I think it's about 17 years, I think we were the first Indian designer brand that actually made sizes from a size 8 to a 18 and a 20. So I, as a woman, always understood as a designer too that I'm not designing clothes just for those, slim girls on the ramp. And I, as a woman, have always gone through a lot of weight changes in my life, always been 20 kilos up, down, have always battled, but I've always understood that whatever weight you are and however you are, you can look fabulous, and that's something I've always believed in. So typically a day in my office, which is just 30 minutes from here, we have women of all shapes and sizes working with us, and what really happens is every time we create a design, the minute it gets approved, the first thing we do is we produce a size set, which is from a size 8 to an 18. So that's 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Yeah, sometimes even, so 8 sizes. And we actually, what we practice in the office is we have women in all shapes and sizes. So they come into the office, everyone's requested to please try this on. We try it on, everybody tries on that same sample. And what I've always found interesting, and that's what I've always even said to whether it's the brides I dress or anyone I dress, is that I always believe that the woman's personality should shine through that dress. And what fascinates me about seeing that same dress on 8 different women is how each woman adds her own persona to that dress. I mean, just take something that you're wearing, this blue dress, right? If 8 women, walk in front of me with that dress, it's just fascinating to see how each one makes it look different. And that's something I've always said, and I think that's the success of my label and my designs, is that I've said that the woman should wear the dress. It's her persona, not the label. She shouldn't be flaunting a label. The design is there to enhance her, but ultimately it's her personality, and it's her in the blue dress, or her in the yellow dress, or her in the now famous Kate Middleton dress. So it's again, I mean, if you take the Kate Middleton dress, we designed that dress. It was designed keeping an Indian woman in mind. And when she wore it on that cricket field and I saw the picture and I went like, oh my God, wow. So and then after that I have met so many women who photographed themselves in that dress, who've ordered it from me and who've sent pictures to me on Instagram, on social media.
It sounds like an art project by itself.
Yeah, saying that, and every woman who sent me her picture in the Kate Middleton outfit, because every e-com order that we did, we requested them that, Anita would love to see you in that dress. So when you wear it, photograph it and send it back to us. And I think hundreds of women responded to that. And for me, it was just fascinating to see how that one dress made each woman look so different and so her, and what it did to her.
Shalini, one of the things that I think we talked about earlier was this thing about how the reason why vanity is associated with fashion is it's an odd thing. Like if you don't try to dress up, like if I turned up here wearing what I was wearing this morning, most of you and I also would think that I was having a mental breakdown, right? Like, so what is it about this pressure to look a certain way, but also not look like you're trying? Like the most deathly example of this is the natural look. In Kerala, there's this whole obsession with the Shalina Sundari, which is the natural beauty. It's a bizarre thing. So you want this ready-made product who looks a certain way, but there must be no display of effort, right? So what is that about?
That kind of judgment, I think, is it's quite quintessential to the female experience at large. For instance, the pressure that women still face, and certainly women of my mother's generation, women now in their 60s, faced when they had a career outside the home and then they had to work at home. And you were just supposed to do both. If you didn't do one or the other well enough, you were failing in some regard. And similarly, for women of my generation, in your 30s and your 20s, it's the same. It hasn't changed at all. You have to make it look effortless. You have to hide the amount of emotional labor that goes into everything that you do, whether that's your family life, your work life, your personal life, your leisure life, your sex life. You have to hide all of the emotional labor. So I would think that this pressure to look a certain way and make it look effortless is just a part of that larger demand.
You were saying something about
First of all, I say that why shouldn't people make an effort, and what's wrong with making an effort in trying to, as I said, that how you look is an expression of your inner self. And I think having worked with women of all kinds all over India, I think one of the most liberating things that's happened to women is actually the fact that they can now dress the way they want to, instead of wearing what their mothers and their grandmothers and their grandmothers, great-grandmothers wore. And, but I do want to add to this that there are many forms of liberation in self-expression. And for a woman in rural India, shifting from a ghagra choli and a ghungat to a sari, even though maybe we may say how sad that she's not wearing those lovely picturesque costumes, is as liberating as it is perhaps for an urban girl to be able to wear a mini skirt instead of a sari. So I think that actually dress is a very, very important cultural and social thing. And I think we should all be making a lot of effort in order to express ourselves through what we wear, and we should feel good about it.
I know that several people on the panel wanted to talk about the Bikini Ban, you know, so, I mean, Lala, you could continue, or Shalini, you could start off. What is happening with the Burkini, and why should we all be, like, talking about it today?
Well, that's, of course, a big conflict for feminists. And, I mean, even for me, I frankly think that the burqa, the hijab, the burkini are absolutely ghastly. I think they not only look awful, but they actually diminish the person who's wearing it because she disappears. On the other hand, I also do feel that everyone has the right to choose the kind of clothes they want to wear. And it shouldn't be a government decision of whether you want to wear it or not. I also find it rather ironic that in a country like France, which is liberated enough to say that people can go topless, they should then object to people covering themselves up. In any case, I don't think forbidding anything will make that change.
So it's odd, like right now at the Ladies Finger, we are editing a piece of a long essay from a young woman who says that in her family no one wears a hijab, and she has decided to wear it, and she's been wearing it for a while, and she loves it. And of course her family is like flipping out, saying, you know, this is insane and you've lost your mind. But she says for her this has been a slow transition to what she thinks of as freedom, her idea of freedom. And she makes a sort of point that the idea of Western liberation is not her idea of liberation. She has complicated things. So it's very hard for me to understand, but I find it a very compelling argument that she says that if I am allowed to make my own choice, that is the biggest sign of freedom, not what I wear, right? So you had a sort of practical point to make about the Bikini Ban, right? What was that?
Clearly, it's not just Islamophobic, but it's also misogynistic, this ban. And while we can talk about, you know, the intricacies of whether a choice is really a choice or not, ultimately, forcing a woman out of a burqa is the same as forcing her into one. And when you impose this kind of limitation, there are many women who will stop swimming altogether because they can't do it in their attire of choice. And goggles and a wetsuit cover just about as much as a burkini. So what's the difference?
Right. So I think in Karnataka a few years ago, when some colleges had sort of said, we won't allow students with the burqas in our college, that was a big concern for communities, because that meant that they wouldn't then send their daughters to college, and then you were actively preventing women from going to college. I want to circle back to something that Anita was saying about how consumerism, and that is a big concern. I wondered how, as feminists, how do you engage with the consumption end of fashion? Like, how can we be feminist about our consumption? How can we be ethical about our consumption, especially in a place like India, where we have a rich heritage of production of textiles, of clothing. The road to that history is not so misted. We don't assume that clothes fall out of the sky. We have a sense of where they come from, more or less, right? So, and how they're produced. So I wanted to ask everyone on the panel what their idea of being an ethical consumer. I'll tell you my brief. Well, it lasted about 8 years. I saw a picture of how T-shirts are made in places like Tirupur, where T-shirts are made en masse. There are people standing in giant vats of chemicals getting almost burnt while they're making cheap T-shirts that, you know, I love to wear. So for about 8 years, I just didn't wear them. Like I couldn't bear the thought, and then I became extremely lazy and went back to wearing them. But I wanted to ask, what are the difficult, not difficult, easy choices of ethical fashion that, you know, each of you have been? Do you want to go for it?
I think it's again very personal. I think I think it's about the choice. It's freedom of choice. The only one thing I'd like to say today as Indians, we definitely, if we can, should choose to wear a craft or support organizations like Dastakar, where your money is being spent, and it's going to benefit when it's designed for good, basically. That's a choice we all need to make.
So my relationship with fashion changed drastically over the last 4 years. I think about 5 years ago, I wanted to be a fashion stylist, and I was really stylish. Like, you should go and see my old pictures. And I did an internship in a magazine, and I was all set. Like, I really thought I knew it. But I don't know, something happened, something in my head changed, and I really started to like question myself after a point. And what I noticed was that when that happened, and how that changed my self-esteem also, that changed the way I started dressing. And I'll tell you something, I just realized at that point that it was that I'd had enough of like, I'll give you a small example. It's really hot in Delhi. And I never realized that I was feeling hotter than others because I was in like synthetic clothing all the time. And I never realized how uncomfortable it was. Like, I'd see my mom in her cotton, and I just thought, oh, whatever. It doesn't flow quite as well as everything else. And my dad would say, oh, the linen crushes so beautifully. That's the beauty of it. And I'm like, ye to press bhi nahi hua, why are you wearing this, And, but something happened, and I started going to work, and I was busy, and I wasn't in an AC all the time. And that's when I sort of just opened my eyes to this world of gorgeous cotton fabric and handloom and things like that. And now when you see my wardrobe, that's all I have predominantly, like not just in Indian wear, but even in Western wear. Like, so what happened with that is my trips to like an H&M or a Forever 21 or like whatever just automatically stopped, because every time I go there now, I look for a certain fabric, or I look for a certain cut, and I don't find it there. So my consumption changed. It changed because of purely selfish reasons, but yeah, that's how it changed.
Well, I think that there's one advantage of being Indian and being in a country which is trying to catch up with the Western world in everything. It means that we have time to look and see what went wrong with the Industrial Revolution and what we want to adopt and what we don't. And I think that one of the things that we should really examine very carefully is the whole way that we are pressured into buying things through seasons, through fashion trends, through whatever. And it is an advertising gimmick. It's a way of making you buy much more than you need to, and sometimes buy things that really don't work for you. And I think we're so fortunate in India that we have all that. We have the brands, we have the malls, and we also have this extraordinary galaxy of craftspeople and materials and designs and styles and clothing cuts which are there. And we should invent our own unique language, and we should take a different way of looking at fashion, which is as rich, as fulfilling, as fun as looking at magazines which were printed maybe several months before somewhere in some other country, some other climate, and see what works for us and what doesn't. I think a lot of people are rediscovering the joys of handloom, the joys of Indian colors and things, and realizing that for our climate, the color of our skins, the kind of lifestyles we lead, that these work very, very well. And you can have the best of both worlds. You wear your jeans, you wear a nice bandhani top.
The only thing that I can add to the marvelous points already raised, particularly about supporting local craftspeople, is that once we buy and we fill our wardrobes, we should also give. And this is something which I have found surprisingly easy to do. I set a challenge for myself last year to give away 100 items of clothing from my wardrobe. And I thought, how will I part with these things? I tell you, it was so easy. It was so easy. And since we're all consumers, and since breaking down those habits and patterns will take a long time, let's try and give back in some other form. If we're going to be buying anyway, let's ensure that when we're done using certain things, or when we have acknowledged that we're never going to use certain things in our wardrobe, let's give it away.
I was also wondering about mass-produced stuff. I mean, to an extent, it is easier when you're buying handlooms or Indian textiles, and then you also have some relationship with a tailor, which is, I mean, sorry about makeup Didi, but my relationship with a tailor is totally BDSM. Like it is like 50 Shades of Darzi. Okay, yeah, but then it's all easy. Then we have the fight, but I know where my clothes are coming from. He's going to give it to me 6 months late. It's cool. Okay, but when your clothes are mass manufactured, I wonder about our obligation as feminists about the people producing these clothes. Like a few months ago in the summer in Bangalore, we had a humongous protest which was by garment factory workers, and it was really fascinating because the papers reported it this way: big traffic jam, IT workers could not get to office. Okay, but what was actually happening was lakhs of women on the street, like really like going for it because they were protesting major issues with pay, with PF, like they were really like going after the government for changing the laws and the PF thing. But all of that caught up with the media like some 2 days later after they had calmed down. Like in the beginning it was like, please let everybody go to work at Infosys, it's so important. I was like, I'm not sure why. But and another weird thing that happened was that we had a young reporter who went and reported the story, spoke to garment factory workers, wrote about what the issues were. And then we published the story, and then several people tweeted to us saying, hey, I think you guys are the only ones who actually spoke to the factory workers. So we were like, nay, that can't be true. I mean, we're a cute little blog sitting in, I won't tell you where, but sitting somewhere in Bangalore. That can't be true. But so when we scanned the media, we really found out that was true. Nobody had actually spoken to the garment factory workers. And then slowly, more and more, like, serious reporting has come out of it, which is talking about the conditions under which these women work. I mean, how for women who have to choose between working in garment factories and sex work, sometimes sex work is much more appealing because it is like relatively under your control compared to working in a factory. So around the world, there are all these movements about tracking back where your clothes come from and how they're produced, and trying to make sure that you don't support industries which do sweatshop things. Do you feel like there should be more of that stuff as consumers in India?
Absolutely. And I think it goes not only for sweatshop workers who really do have the most appalling lives, but even for craftspeople. I'm always amazed whenever we have an exhibition or bazaar at how people come and bargain. And people who will never dream of going into a mall and bargaining over a pair of Reebok shoes or something which cost 3 or 4,000 rupees. But they'll come to a little juttiwala and say, 250 rupees? My God, my grandmother bought this for 50 rupees in 2000 and whatever. So, I mean, it's really curious. And I think because we have so many craftspeople and so many living traditions, and we've seen them around for so many centuries, we really take them for granted and treat them appallingly. And I think we need to really realize that all over the world today, handmade, handcraft, handloom is like a designer label, and you should be paying for that. It's not a great favor that you're doing somebody by buying something from them. And
right. You do hear that conversation where someone's arrived at a stall and they're like, I'm doing charity by buying
Not
your
only that, I mean, I go around the Daska Bazaar telling people not to bargain, and these three ladies titiping about in their Christian Labute stilettos with diamond clips here and there, arguing about some, really ridiculous cost. And when I tapped them on the shoulder and I said, Madam, these bazaars are to do them a favor, not you, she said, oh, this is my culture.
What is the culture? I'm sorry?
Bargaining.
Oh, bargaining is the culture. Okay, right. I sort of missed that a little bit. Okay. Do you guys, I mean, do you also feel like this is something that is practical and possible as politically conscious people to think about where our clothes come from? I mean, obviously you do, but I'm saying as customers, the rest of us, do you engage with some of this? Do you?
It's possible. I mean, we're generally very conscious now about where our food comes from, and we consume our clothes as much as our food, if not more. And it is likely, like people like me, quite simply, I don't have that much information, or I'm just blissfully ignorant most of the time or spaced out. But if I know what is going on, and if things are as accessible to me, like just a random example to me, when I go to a Khan market or whatever, and a Noki is right beside a Vero Moda, and I can choose to go to one store and not to the other. And so yeah, like if we're aware of what is going on, what goes on behind.
Anita, do you have any advice? Do you have any advice as, I mean, from someone on the inside? Do you have any advice on how we could be like more in alliance with people who produce our clothes? How can we be more like thoughtful consumers about clothes?
I think I just agree with Leila, where I just think we need to instill a pride. Indians need to get a pride of handcraft in India and need to realize that you have to pay more for handcrafted. I find that a challenge in this country where all of us are very fascinated with foreign labels and are willing to pay 5 times, 10 times as much from something that comes from the West, and refuse to pay even a little extra for something that's handmade right here in India, that's beautiful, that's been being practiced here for centuries. It's just considered like, it's just not considered thing that you'd pay money for. And I think that mindset has to change, really change in this country.
To come back to something that you were saying in your earlier conversation, do you ever feel like it would have been easier to be a guy as an actor who just moved from Delhi to Bombay and you'd get much more roles?
No.
No?
I don't know, I don't feel that either. Sometimes I just feel it would be easier to just be a guy. Like randomly, like, I wouldn't have to bother about certain things, but then I realized that I actually like bothering about them, I choose to bother about them, so it's cool. But no, I mean, I haven't felt that. I haven't felt, that
Do you feel like the
discrimination.
pressure on male actors is marginally less?
I'll
or
tell you what they
considerably
have.
less? Huh.
The problem is that if a woman starts to age even remotely and she's an actor, then all eyes are on her, But you have these actors, matlab, they will work with someone's granddaughter also and someone's mother also, and they will be paired opposite them romantically, So that I don't like. Like, I shouldn't, like right now I'm in Bombay and I'm like, oh shit, I'm 27. Why did I start so late?
You're ready for the old age home in this.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I'm 27. And if you go by certain standards, I have like 5 years or I don't know what, less or whatever. And that to me is just stupid. Like, why should that be the case? So that way, I don't wish I was a man or anything. I'm happy being who I am. But yeah, like, I wish things could change a little that way. And they probably will. Things are changing.
They will.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say I've been a journalist for 30 years now. And I've been in fashion journalism. And I think we journalists are the biggest culprits because we only promote what is fashionable internationally. I teach at NIFT and I have students who don't know our Indian designers, who don't know our Indian crafts, but they know who Alexander McQueen is. They know what kind of shoes he wore for which show. But when I ask them who's Rahul Mishra, they are scratching their heads. So I think our journalism, especially fashion journalism, needs to look at arts and crafts and India more closely. I completely agree with you.
Thank you, Satya.
My question is actually, when we do fashion or try to do... Sure. I'm Dr. Sulabha Pathak, and I'm an immunologist, a scientist, really. So my question is, when the problem with this feminism and fashion is the why. Why are we doing the fashion? And therefore, because quite often we are doing it to be attractive to the male. If that is the case, then it does not go with them. It need not be, but it is quite often that. And that is where the crux of the matter between fashion and feminism. Why are we doing it? So,
I actually disagree with that a bit because I think women dress much more for women than they dress for men, even if they're not lesbian. But I do think that traditionally women dressed for society because it was almost a uniform which showed which caste, which community. And I think fashion has broken that, so I'm all for it. And I don't think we need worry too much about the men. Just look at them.
I would extend that a little bit to talk about gender and gender identity in general. And I think one of the most obvious ways in which we know that fashion isn't just about, attracting a mate, so to speak, is if we look at transgender communities who face extraordinary amounts of pain in order to just dress and look and be who they actually are. So it goes, far more than about sex itself. It's about identity.
For me, I think feminism is the freedom to be what you want to be. Fashion should give you the freedom to wear what you like. You want to wear it for yourself. You want to wear it for your man. You want to wear it for another woman. It's just what you want to be.
Hello, my name is Sukriti. I work as a designer for a travel wear company, and we also manufacture garments for athletes, especially local athletes based in Bombay, because we're only functioning in Bombay right now. So my question to you is that I would personally prefer wearing a beautiful chicken kurta or handloom textiles, but what I design is functional and technical, and it depends and focuses on technology, especially when it comes to fabrics. And that fabric and that technology is not possible when you're manufacturing everything that's handmade, including technology or focusing on like a runner or a trekker is difficult. So how do I tackle that as a design problem?
Can I answer that? I'm a firm believer that handcraft and technology must coexist together. So today when we are saying over here that Indians need to take pride in wearing handmade, that does not mean that technology is a very important role in our lives. Technology serves a purpose. The large mills today, the textile mills that produce fabric in hundreds and lakhs of meters and produce it with a different costing and a different quality, I firmly think the two need to coexist. You don't go back to the old, and you have to embrace the new, you have to embrace technology, but everything that you do, you have to just question it from a sustainable viewpoint. But the two definitely, functional clothing serves a purpose, and there is a need for that too. There has to be balance, I think, in everything that you do, and ditto in fashion.
So I think there's also a certain degree of confusion in thinking of handloom as something that doesn't have technology. It does have technology. I think a lot of the concern that people who are interested in traditional textiles is the feeling that people involved in traditional textiles don't have the time, the capital, the space to advance their own technology. Like the earliest, the idea of industrial revolution comes from the world of textiles, right? So why is it then that one set of people engaged in one set of activities get stuck? Is because they don't have access to capital to create new things. It's not that they just want to be stuck in the past, in that traditional idea of textiles is for history and like Speedos is for the future. It isn't that, right? I'm sure there's someone somewhere in the country right now who's completely capable of creating something sensational for athletes, but he or she probably is not able to pay their own rent. So then to all kinds of things, yeah.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think it's a way that we look at these things. We always think that craft is sort of frozen and static in time, and it must remain exactly the same. I was saying this the other day to our new Minister of Textiles, to say that, putting hashtags about wearing handloom or sending fashion designers to Benares is the last stage. You first have to look, if you want designers to make Western clothes in Benares, you need to change the technology of the loom. It's meant for, Benares weaves are meant for draped clothes, not really for stitched garments. And you have to work with that. You have to get, again, the raw materials, growing of silk and cotton, indigenous qualities again, not importing shiny Chinese cheap silk. And you start from there. You don't end in this, a dramatic gesture. Publicizing the glory of handloom is absolutely worthless if the weavers can't produce what you want.
No, but I think even when you look at technology, technology also means bringing, a computer into the village.
Absolutely.
It also means the weaver having, I mean, today my weavers in Benares, they coordinate with me on WhatsApp. He's weaving on the loom and he sends me a WhatsApp picture. And I love the technology. I love the fact that I don't have to go all the way to Benares to supervise my design, and I'm doing it on WhatsApp. So for me, the handloom can stay traditional and the weaver can stay traditional. He works from his home, but he's using technology very effectively, and that is the solution.
Not to say that what you're doing is not important, right? I was just reading about swimmers in Rio Olympics. They're like petrified, like all Americans, of germs. So apparently they were told that if you swim in the sea in Rio, you will die of some fatal illness. And everybody was like tracking fecal matter in the sea and stuff. So then with the speed of American obsession with technology, they managed to create a new like fabric for the swimmers, which would allow them to not at all come into contact with anything in the Brazilian waters. So the last 6 months, they've obsessively quickly created some sort of swimsuit.
Yeah, so
which
that's
is
important
like,
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't do that on the handloom. So the two need to coexist happily
That's
next
the
to each
beauty
other.
of
And
India,
that's the
that
beauty.
we have both.
And in fashion, you want more, So I just think the two need to coexist and balance needs to be there.
But it needs to be a level playing field where both have access.
Hi, I'm Shalaka, and my question to you guys is that we have this Make in India campaign going on since long now, and what initiatives is the government doing for the craftsmen and the yellow-collared workers in the fashion industry?
I think since you met the textile minister, that's your question.
Can I quickly quote one recent example of how we partnered with the government, and it's been a very effective partnership. A few months ago, Poonam Mahajan, who is from Bombay, approached us, and she wanted us to do something in her village because the Prime Minister has a mandate that everyone adopts, his team, everyone adopts a village, and she's adopted Charoti. She came to us, I think, as recent as 6 months ago. We, as House of Anita Dongre, it's an initiative which we also wanted to do something and start working in villages. We went into Charoti, which is about 3 hours from here. A very, very, the villagers, because of lack of monsoons, there are many years that they don't get a sufficient crop and their livelihood is affected. The government gave us the land in the village. We set up a training center. We sent our people from Bombay. We effectively have trained about, I think, 35 women. And we run a sewing center in Charoti today. And this was, I think, a very, the perfect partnership where the government gave us the land and the training and the machinery, and setting up that whole workshop is something that we did. And we continue providing work to the village women. It's an initiative we've taken where we ensure that these 35 women are constantly manufacturing for us in the village. So it just means setting up trainers and a support system. But I think this is a very effective partnership. And when I met Smriti Irani last week, this is exactly what I discussed with her. So we've decided to take up 4 more village clusters and do the same, where we'll train our people and send them. And all we ask for the government is that you give us the space there, and then, so for me, that's a joint partnership which works very effectively with the fashion industry. I hope, yes, I think Charoti is successful. It's a hugely successful project, and it's been 6 months in the running and working extremely smoothly.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and I'm a final year student of sociology and anthropology. So my questions to all of y'all. So while some of us might identify with, say, third wave feminism, where it's all about choice, where you could be a feminist while being a bra burner or wearing lipstick on your first date, how would you all locate feminism in the idea that trends from more regressive times keep coming back, whether it's, say, the 50s housewife midi dresses or the bustiers and stuff like that, which at a time, especially in the 60s, it was regarded as regressive and oppressive. So where do you locate feminism within that when we wear it in the 2010s?
I think fashion reflects the changes of society around you. Now, if you notice globally in the last 2 years, the biggest trend is athleisure. Now, why did the athleisure trend come in? It came in from the USA, where a lot of trends emerged from. Women have got really busy today. They're juggling many roles. A typical working woman in New York today wakes up in the morning, gets her kids ready for school, goes to work, works all day, comes back. Exercise has become a big part of her lives, packs in exercise. So obviously her clothing needs change. So athleisure is today reflecting the changing need of what women need today. So it's a trend where she puts on something, she's good enough to wear that to the office, she's good enough to wear that to work, she's good enough to wear that to drop her kids to school. And that works for her. And fashion reflects what women really today want and need. And I think that's the close, interesting relationship between society and fashion.
I'll just add to that by saying reclamation can be an incredibly subversive thing, where you go back and you look at things which used to hold people in shackles, physically even. Corsets, for instance. Not that I'm recommending that anyone wear corsets, or don't, it's up to you. But reclamation as a personal project, when you reclaim not just an object, but your relationship with that object, can be a very powerful thing.
But is there always reclamation? For instance, we may wear a corset as some sort of like boudoir chic, that kind of look, but if you're wearing Spanx under your clothes and you're in one of those, why do lingerie stores have the smallest changing rooms in the world? I mean, I know the clothes are small, but the changing room also has to shrink, so you're trying out your bra and you're like in this position, right? So usually when I'm standing there, there's also someone who's trying to like get me out and try on Spanx, right? There are many things I want to try for adventure, but this is not a direction I want to go in. But so corset coming back, or the intent of the corset coming back as Spanx, can these things really be reclaimed? Aren't they just like torture?
They can be. I think they can be, and that...
I think just the fact that you have a fashion trend where you wear the corset on top of all your other clothes is actually making fun of the corset and saying that, listen, what was secret is now open, and it's rather comic, and it doesn't mean that you have to wear it every day.
So you're saying it's funny to wear your corset on top, like my nephew reads Captain Underpants, it's a bit like that? Okay. So does this vaguely answer your question? Just like approximately about half a kilometer within the answer. Yeah.
This idea of dressing up to attract people, right? And why attracting somebody is necessarily unfeminist. Connected a little bit to what Sharanya was saying before, that, you're not supposed to make an effort, you're supposed to disguise the effort. But it's also to do with sexual freedom, because the moment that you dress up to attract someone, you are foregrounding sexuality. And you are saying that we're all doing this to attract people, to be attractive, to be attracted to other people's beauty. I'm pretty uncomfortable about the idea that beauty doesn't matter. That brains are better than beauty, or beauty is better than brains. It becomes the same thing, right? So I'm wondering also about the idea of sexness in designing fashion in a positive sense, not in a constraining sense that you can only be sexy one way, but when you're doing stuff with fashion, and that's generally for the panel, how are you thinking of sex as a part of people's lives and interactions in a positive feminist kind of way?
But I think that's like, even men dress to attract. It's some men dress to attract, some women dress to attract. It's
right. But the point that if we pretend that beauty doesn't matter, isn't that a total falsehood? So I find that interesting. There was an essay. I'm trying to remember the name of the person who wrote it. She's a novelist, the daughter of a supermodel, and which in itself is interesting. But so she writes this thing about how literary men, like famous literary men, continuously behave as if it's casual that their heroines are beautiful. That she's just, like, all kinds of things are happening to her in 600 pages, but also, by the way, she's beautiful, right? So she sort of unpacks this and says, how is it that her beauty is not foregrounded as impactful in the whole book? Because everything that everyone does and interacts with her is going to be on the basis of how she looks. If she is this, molecular biologist and also like unbelievably good looking, then that should be something that is reflected in the book. How can we pretend that doesn't matter? So yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, yeah.
I think that the conflation of beauty and sexiness, it's wrong because that requires that you conform to a certain standard. When in fact we know that in the effort to conform to that standard, there are people who suffer body dysphoria, who suffer from anorexia, for instance, or bulimia, and probably don't feel very sexy at all.
Hi, my question is to Anita. If you look at fashion at workplace, a lot of companies want their female employees to be dressed in formal wear. Even if you look at, once you enter Godrej, you see the receptionist wearing the suit and not the sari. So do you think that going against the feminism, or women should start dressing more like men at workplace to be on par with them?
No. The most powerful women in our country are in saris, and they look beautiful.
But then
You don't
why
need to
the
dress like a
companies are
man.
emphasizes that the women should be wearing more of a formal wear? And I mean the
Parmesh,
younger
you
generation.
need to answer this.
But I think it's also, I mean, you're assuming masculine qualities in a suit. No, well, the truth is I don't know. I mean, I didn't work on the uniform. If I would work on the uniform, then we would work on something else. But I think everything in that sense is a construct. So I think the uniform at Godrej of reception is an imagination of how Godrej as a company wants to be perceived. This building itself is a certain kind of construct and an imagination of how, and I mean, we can go into detail about how Godrej is imagining itself as it goes to the future. So perhaps the uniform is just one manifestation of that. It's a very good question. I don't know. But maybe we can, if you're really interested, we can look into it and see how the uniform was designed and what that meant. I'd personally be very interested in knowing
No,
as well.
I'm completely okay with that. And in fact, I feel even if women are dressing more like men, there's nothing wrong about it.
No, there's nothing wrong. Dress how you like. Yeah. But each company has its own rules, and I think that's fine too. I mean, that's their corporate philosophy.
Yeah, apparently in Lulemon you have to get up in the morning and do yoga to work in Lulemon, right? That's what I was told.
So I want to, today I realized that there is a huge misrepresentation of fashion industry altogether. So my question is, the kind of misrepresentation there is of fashion, of body image, and the beauty standards, and the kind of self-doubt it has built, partly due to the way our socialization. What do you think, so what do you think about the whole idea of acceptable and non-acceptable women and their fashion? Like, how the kind of criticism a woman faces, especially a fat or a plus-sized woman if she wears a bikini or, those kind of clothes. So the whole, again, if you could touch up on the idea of acceptable and non-acceptable women and their fashion.
Is this for someone in particular?
No, open.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy for you to come to the swimming pool with me. Then I will show you what a plus-size woman in a bikini looks like.
No, again, it's like...
But if you see a plus-size woman in a bikini, I can assure you the men will just look and not say anything. It's the other women in the room who will have 20 things to say about that woman in the bikini. So it's up to us women not to be so overcritical of other women. I find that women are the biggest critics. You go to any party, and that's something we have to change.
But is it even about size anymore? Like if you see Ashley Graham, she's smoking hot. But technically according to her size. But I think it's more about flat tummy hona chahiye, big boobs hone chahiye. Like, you have to have some checks that you have, But I mean, you could be really skinny, you could still look bad, so to say, in a bikini. Like, it's more about, I don't know what it's become, but it's just, anyone can find anything sexy wear at this point, and I feel that that's a good thing because I've seen so many, like with crop tops, what's happened is that everyone can wear crop tops now, and that's so nice. Because earlier, this was just the case with a sari, A sari is for every body type. I mean, regardless of what it conceals or what it shows or whatever. But now with so much of fashion available, I mean, I think the whole range of acceptability has also increased. Like, it's become very elastic now. Like, a lot more things are acceptable. And people, I think less and less people now say, oh, I look so slutty, my dress is so short. And, rubbish like that, these things are like left or are leaving our dictionary. which is nice.
I think it's up to the woman. Whatever she wears, if she's confident, that's up to her.
Yeah.
She should wear it. That's it.
Exactly.
And to the men also.
Yeah.
In this whole discussion on fashion and feminism, we left out the men, but maybe that's a
And
that's
if you
a
want
good
to
thing.
wear something to seduce someone, do it. That's a good thing. That's amazing. It's okay.
Including your own self.
What's wrong with that? Yeah.